This event will be recorded.
Hi, Dee, can you hear me?
Yes. So thank you
Okay.
everyone for joining us today. We have a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're glad that you were able to join. We're going to give it just a little bit longer as we're working out these technical difficulties, and we'll get started here shortly. All right. Thank you for joining us today, everyone. My name is Dee Brown. I'm your host and a WIDS ambassador. If you're not familiar with WIDS, that's short for Women in Data Science. And it's a great organization that we partner with every year. And we're excited that you're here. So today's WIDS regional event will be overlooking a path to data science. Going forward, we will, as I mentioned to you, I'm your host, Dee Brown, and we have today's speaker, Arpita Verma, who will be speaking about her path to data science. Both Arpita and I work with CNA Corporation, which is a nonprofit as well as a government contractor based in Arlington, Virginia. We support different government entities and do a lot of great work. So definitely, whenever you have a chance, check us out. And thank you for CNA for sponsoring this event in partnership with Women in Data Science. So I always like to do a little a preface to why we're doing this in the first place. I always talk about the challenges of women in STEM. And why it's so important to get more women involved with STEM. So as you can see from a couple of the charts here, the women graduates versus other STEM fields, how it kind of falls off when it comes to like areas of like computer science and other analytical areas and so forth. And to your right, you can see how there's been slight increase in some of the areas of engineering and math. However, it should be more, considering that women make up more than half of the workforce. And women at this point are actually the largest number of people or students that are enrolled right now within data science, or not data science, within college. So if you look at the years or the jobs over years, you see the total that are employed at the top, and then the increase of STEM jobs for women has increased over time. Yet again, if you look at it, women make up majority of that workforce, but still a very slim portion of what roles are in STEM. With engineers that are a lower area, computers, mathematics has somewhat risen, but you can definitely tell that there's still room to grow. Now, this is probably my favorite chart that just really breaks it down for you. When we're looking at funneling of women through different stages, from the time that they enroll in school and graduate to the time that they are going into a STEM related field, especially data science, you can see there's a drop off. As I mentioned earlier, majority of women are going to college now that are enrolled in college, and 55% of those graduates are women. Of those 55%, 35% make up STEM degrees, 25 make up the workforce. So there's still a drop off there. And then 15% are in data science as women professionals in that area. Now, if you look at government, that even drops off even more to 8 to 11%. And so you want to know why, right? And unfortunately, I don't have all the data, but that shows you that there's definitely a need to increase these areas and make sure there's not a drop off and for more women to pursue. As I mentioned to you today, without further ado, I wanted to introduce to you Arpita Verma, who's a data scientist here at CNA. She works with our data analytics program, and she's been with us. She just joined last year, and we're really excited that she's really taken part in a lot of our outreach activities. Arpita comes with us with a degree in engineering as well as an MBA in business, which is really cool. So Arpita, without further ado, I'll kick it off to you.
Do you see my screen?
Yes, go right ahead.
Great. Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you for bearing with me with all these technical difficulties. First, I know my camera was flashing, and now with the echo and everything. But I wanted to take you all along for a little drive with me. I want to share my journey up till now that I'm in data science. So jumping right in, I started my education. Right after my grade school, I started my education thinking that I wanted to be in advertising. And my first 2 weeks into college, this is what I was doing because going into marketing and advertising was my dream. So I joined this school. Mass communication and media was my major. That got canceled because I realized that this is only utilizing the creative part of my brain and not the logical side. So I decided, okay, architecture would be the perfect combination of being able to use both my logical brain as well as my creative brain. But 2 more weeks into that, I realized that I did not really want to do that. So then I came down to engineering, and a wise man, my father, told me, you know what, why don't you get try and understand how engineers think, how they solve problems, get that basic framework in your head, go through 4 years of that, and then you can do whatever you want. And also he had that Indian parent thing, like, why don't you be an engineer, doctor, or lawyer, and then we'll talk about anything that you want to do after that. So I went through 4 years of engineering. I became an engineer, something that I didn't really want to do, but I picked up a lot of really cool skills on the way. I learned how to code. I learned how to build robots. I took part in a lot of robo-wars, building cars, having them fight, because I was into electrical engineering and it was very hardware-centric. So it was a lot of fun, but I knew throughout that that's not something that I wanted to do. So straight out of engineering, I went into an MBA program and I decided that, okay, I'm going to go back into marketing. I'm going to go back into advertising and stay there forever. The 2 years of that, and I interned with L'Oreal Paris with their head office in India in marketing. That was a really cool gig. Straight out of my MBA, I got a job. And that's how my career started. I started in marketing. I started in brand management and new product development with the biggest liquor company in the world called Diageo. They have an India subsidiary called Diageo India. And that was a very interesting thing for a 20, 21, 22-year-old to do because, being able to develop new products, be able to develop the DNA of a brand right from the beginning was an opportunity that I did not think I would get right in the beginning. I did that for about 2.5, 3 years. And then I decided to switch to a related but a different field altogether for business development in the insurance sector, still in India. I spent about 2.5 years again there. That was not something that I wanted to do long term. And at that point, I decided that maybe I should go back into brand management. And I contacted my previous boss. We decided that, okay, I interviewed and I decided to join there again. But before that, I came here to the U.S. For a holiday. And I'd been talking to a guy, and we'd been talking for a long time. And then we decided to get married. And I realized that I wouldn't be able to work in India anymore because my to-be husband lives here. So I came here and I got into project management. That is something that I did not have any experience in, but it's something that I picked up really fast, and I stayed about 3 years in that. But again, as you can see, my career path has been very convoluted. And again, I realized that this is not somewhere where I'm using my technical brain a lot. So I decided to do another master's in computer science this time here at George Mason University with a concentration in ML. Now, the concentration in ML, that happened, that was not something that I had decided to do. What my intent was to go back into coding, go back into software, and see if I liked it there. But I took one data mining course, and it was love at first code. Um, there I realized how cool it was, how interesting it was to be able to solve problems that way using just hard data. I learned how to code Python. I used to code in C, C++, and hardware programming during my engineering. But this time I was coding in Python. I had to learn it within a month or two. That is something that I had not anticipated. Did that, and I took a few algorithms course, and then I decided to go deeper into this. I took a machine learning class. I took a massive data set with PySpark class. I took a computer vision class. I took an NLP, natural language processing class. And I realized this is somewhere what I wanted to be. And it was one of the most interesting things that I'd done. I would read technical papers for fun. I had become a complete nerd, and I realized this is where I want to be. And that's how I got into data science. Right out of my master's, my second master's, I started working with CNA. And CNA is a company with a lot of PhDs. I think there are about 70% PhDs in our company right now. Dee, correct me if I'm wrong. But there are a lot of really, really smart people here. I feel intellectually challenged every day, which brings me on to my next section. I joined CNA last March. I just finished a year a couple of weeks ago. The thing that I really like about CNA is that you're not just bound to one project. You work on multiple projects at any given point of time. I'm currently working on 3 different projects, and each project requires a completely different set of skills as a data scientist. Some I'm good at, some I'm still learning. And the environment here, there's so much psychological safety that if you don't know it, you don't know it yet. Everybody trusts that you will pick up the skills, you will make mistakes, you will get a lot of feedback, but you will pick up the skills and you will excel at them. That's the idea. We're all adults. We all love to learn. There are a lot of really nerdy people around here who get excited about learning new stuff. So that's the kind of environment that I feel I really thrive in, and which is why I plan to stick around here a lot more. So some of the skills that I picked up, one of the projects that I'm working on right now, the data that I'm wrangling is about 200 million rows. And that's not something that I can just use any regular techniques on. So I'm coming up with a lot of very efficient code to be able to implement any kind of model on that. I'm one thing about working here is that a lot of times if the environment you're working in, there are a lot of libraries and you cannot access. So you have to work with what you have. So yeah, that's one thing that I'm working on right now. For another project, I've built different models, different metrics. I spoke to my boss, my manager, a couple of months ago, and I said I wanted to try to be able to apply my NLP skills, my natural language processing skills, and build on those. And I came by a different project where I could do that. I was a data scientist on that project. There were a lot of qualitative researchers. And I brought that perspective, a data-centric perspective, and that turned out to be a really cool project. Another thing that I've recently started dabbling in is design thinking. Design thinking is it's a very non-linear, flexible way of a framework for thinking about unstructured problems. We're applying design thinking in a lot of different projects. We're bringing stakeholders together. They come in and they discuss, and we provide the framework and the structure in which we are going to discuss, and then we come up with results. The biggest thing in all of these projects is that there's a lot of intellectual freedom. Like I wrote on slides, I'm in the driver's seat of deciding where I want to take the project, how I want to contribute, what I want to get out of it, what I want to learn. That's a very me perspective. Obviously, the project has certain goals, and we have to bring results, and our research has to be up to mark. But there are a lot of avenues to be able to direct your own career here. Which brings me to people. The people here, like I said, it's a really, really smart bunch of people. I'm very fortunate that I get a lot of mentors here who have been through the situations that I'm going through, or who are in the position to be able to guide me or redirect me to somebody who can. Um, I also get a lot of feedback, and this is okay. So one way of saying it is constructive feedback, but what I like is really brutal, honest feedback. Like, how did I do? Tell me exactly what you thought about it. There's no sugarcoating it. It's like, this is what you did. This is what was good about it, and this is what I did not like. This is what I recommend changing. It's very straightforward feedback, exactly the kind that I like. And it's something that's built into the culture here. You get a lot of feedback about your work, about your communication, about the way you brief. You're briefing the sponsor, the client. There's a lot of feedback about that, and that's really helpful because that's something that really helps me grow. Some of the projects that I've worked on, one very cool project and a project that I've been working on pretty much ever since I joined is working on Super Hornets. I'm sure you would have watched or heard about Top Gun, the new one that I came out, and the 1980s or 1990s one as well. So the fighter jets on there are the Naval Aviation Enterprise. They have a lot of fighter jets. That movie talks about F-16s. What I work on is F-18s, E's and F's. These are really, really cool aircraft. And to be able to have such complex pieces of machinery mission capable and ready at any point of time is a humongous task. There's a lot of stuff that goes into maintenance. There's a lot of stuff just to keep them mission capable and ready for combat. That's one of the big things that I've worked on here. I'll give you an example of a very short, um, a very small section of what I worked on. That was configuration management. These Super Hornets have been coming off the line. Boeing is the manufacturer. So Boeing has been producing them since the late 1990s. We're in the 2020s right now. So imagine a car that came out in the 1990s or early 2000s would be very different. The technology, the parts are very different than what would be produced right now. But all of these have to be mission capable, right? So the task of deploying these aircraft out at sea, making sure that we have all the spare parts available, the entire range, and also enough and more of the quantities of these parts. So there's a lot of variation in the configuration of these Super Hornets. So it's important to be able to carry all of that. But there's only so much real estate on an aircraft carrier, like the picture that you see in the middle. That's what the airport looks like at sea. It's not just the airport; it's also the hangar where where they have all the parts, where the maintenance is happening. So it's everything. It's a self-contained unit. Of course, it can get parts, but that's something that adds additional cost and a hit to sustain mission capabilities. So the idea was to put a number on how much variation there is within a squadron of Super Hornets. A squadron is sort of a group of Super Hornets that stay together on an aircraft carrier. So we came up with this configuration similarity score to be able to put a number on that. This required a lot of modeling, a lot of data we needed was from different sources in the Navy, and we managed to get all of that and come up with that. And this is the sort of work that we get to brief out to the Vice Chief of the Navy. CNA has a direct path. A lot of our projects are briefed out to the Vice Chief of the Navy every quarter. So it's very important that we go with recommendation, with actionable insights if we're going to the Vice Chief of the Navy and telling them what we think. Another project that I'm working on is surface ships and submarine maintenance. Again, if you look at this ship right here in the photograph, that's at least 3 football fields long. It's a very, very complex machine. It has a nuclear reactor on it to just to power the ship. So imagine once this goes into a shipyard for maintenance, it's a 2-3 year long project, right? There's a lot of planning that goes into it. There's a lot of planning that goes into it even before the ship comes in, during that, and then after that, just to see the post-maintenance. So I'm working on that data. This is the massive data set that I was talking about. It's again, a very interesting project. And just to compare and contrast the aviation team that I work on and the shipyards team that I work on, they're very different teams. And it's interesting to see, to be in one company but still be able to work in completely different teams. That's something that I, again, really thrive in and really like. Another example of a project that I wanted to give, which again requires a very different skill set, is the DoD is trying to come up with a federated AI ML platform for all the services. So for the Navy, the Air Force, the Army, everybody, the Marine Corps, the Space Force, everybody would be able to utilize one AI ML platform. And one of the projects that we're working on is to be able to identify the needs. We're talking to a lot of stakeholders. We're holding design thinking sessions. We're analyzing surveys that we sent out to them just to be able to figure out what are the commonalities there. If there are unique mission-specific needs, what are those? How can one DoD serve all of these services the best? Okay, so this brings me to some of the challenges that I've faced. First, as a woman, I still have a very strong imposter syndrome. I know that it's an imposter syndrome and I'm not that bad and I'm doing good work and I'm contributing, but it's always there. I also feel it's because I'm working around such smart people, such intellectual people, that I feel intellectually challenged all the time. It's great because I can grow and learn so much, but sometimes I'm like, you know what? I am not up to this. I'm not up to scratch. Maybe I'm not good enough. Then also, the tech field overall is very male-dominated. Thankfully, in CNA, again, I've been very fortunate that there are a lot of women in leadership roles, a lot of women in project directors roles. There are a lot of mentors, a lot of, I don't know the percentage, but there's good gender equality here, I feel. Another thing is just to be able to find my voice and making sure that I'm voicing my opinions, making sure I'm not falling into groupthink by just saying, okay, of course, somebody else will bring that up. I don't need to say anything. That's something that I'm still working on. There are a lot of challenges working with the DoD or the government. First of all, we are a contractor. We are not a part of the government. So as a contractor, there's always this sense of, we cannot get all the data that we want access to because, again, we're a contractor. We're not the Navy. But a good thing about being a nonprofit, which CNA is that because of that status, we can still get access. Like for the configuration management project that I was talking about for Super Hornets, that we got data from the manufacturer because we were a nonprofit. Any other company possibly will not be able to get that. Another big thing is domain knowledge. My knowledge about the U.S. government and DoD before CNA all came from movies. That's what I thought they all did, and how they talked, and I did not have any domain knowledge. I feel like at least the first few months, I felt like I was drinking from a fire hose. I had no idea it was alphabet soup. There were so many acronyms being thrown around. I had no idea what was going on. And my manager at that time told me, Arpita, 6 months from now, you're going to write a sentence in acronyms, and that's when you'll know that you've become one of us. And that's when you'll start understanding what's going on. And it's totally okay. The first 6 months, you're still learning. And I feel like I'll be learning throughout because the Navy especially is so disaggregated and it is so big and it's spread all over the world. It's impossible for one person to know everything that's going around. So yeah, that's the piece about domain knowledge. Another thing that in my 4 previous jobs that I never really did as seriously as I do now is writing. So being a research organization, our main product, our most visible product is what we write. That's the thing that's disseminated all around. That's what lives on after we're done with the project, after we're done with the briefing, the presentation. Our reports are what stay around. And people have told me they would be in Pentagon this year and they would be briefing a completely different project. Then they would see a report with their name on it that they wrote back in 2017 on somebody's desk. And they're reading it very seriously because it's good work, but it's 6 years later and it still lives on. So writing is one big thing that I'm really trying to learn. And it's a very common thing. Oh, I know how to write. I mean, it's not a big thing, but to be able to write effectively, to be able to think and structure your thoughts and write effectively, being able to convey all your ideas with no verbal cues, with nothing is not an easy skill. All of us here learn that. We have classes here at CNA. All of us, all the researchers are learning how to write better and write well. Like I told you in the beginning, I came in from India. So as an immigrant, first, I thought my biggest hurdle would be to get a security clearance. That turned out to be a pretty straightforward process, surprisingly. But it still was a challenge. I listed that as a challenge because I was really worried about that because if you're working with the government in this sort of a space, you need a security clearance. Another thing that, just to share an incident, I was in a meeting. There were a lot of people from outside CRA, from the Navy, and everybody was sort of on first name basis. And I was still pretty new to CNA, and maybe I did not enunciate my name properly, or somebody missed it. But I was being referred to as CNA the entire meeting when everybody else was being referred to by their names or their last names. And I realized that, yes, some people butcher your name, but some people are so worried about butchering your name that they just don't want to attempt saying it. And it's totally understandable. But that's something that I realized. And in my next few meetings with that person, I made sure that I would enunciate my name properly. I would talk about how it's a hard name and difficult to pronounce, of course, and I would give them cues about how to pronounce it. And then I realized it's best to carry out around business cards so that if somebody did not catch my name, I mean, there are so many new people that you meet all the time. If somebody did not get a chance to catch my name, they always have my business card to refer to. So yeah, that happened once, and it's not happened since. I don't know, just because of sheer luck or because I've been handing around a lot of business cards and I'm running out very quick. Another thing that I wanted to bring out was, which I feel is a challenge as an immigrant, is Americans talk in metaphors a lot, be it sports metaphors, and now in the military, they talk. So it's American metaphors and it's also military talk. So somebody came in and said, "Oh, sorry for dive bombing you," and I have no idea what they're apologizing for because I don't know what dive bombing even means. So things like that. It's something that I actually have a little notebook where I write all of these things and I sprinkle these into conversations and see if I'm getting a weird look or if somebody's just taking their stride. I'm like, okay, maybe I used it correctly. So yeah, that's something that I'm still learning. Some of the advice that I wanted to give out to the people out there is nobody knows everything, be it in terms of technologies, data science, machine learning tools, be it something, just domain knowledge about the Navy. Everybody knows just a few pieces of the puzzle. Even the experts don't know everything. It's impossible for one person to know everything. It is totally okay to learn as you go, to admit that you don't know, and ask for clarification or ask for explanation. I've been told several times, you know what, if you hear an acronym you don't understand, stop and ask. It's totally fine. Everybody knows you're either new or you just willing to, you just happen to not know that acronym, and it's totally fine. It's just stop and ask. Um, One big thing that our VP here in the data science division at CNA keeps saying is to have a growth mindset, it's important to learn how to learn. There are a lot of courses out there, some of those better than other ones. It's to learn how to learn fast, how to learn effectively, because all of us are lifelong learners, especially data science and machine learning. The landscape is changing so fast, especially with Chat GPT out now. The landscape is changing so fast. It's important to keep upskilling yourself and learn new things. And which goes to the second point, that invest in yourself, invest in improving yourself technically, your communication skills, instead of just optimizing for salary, that, okay, whoever is giving me the best buck, I'm going to go there. There are a lot of organizations that may not pay top dollar, but the kind of learning that you will get there, the kind of exposure that you will get there is not something that you would get anywhere else. And which is something that I really feel about CNA. Having your work briefed out to the Vice Chief of the Navy in the first 2 months and then every 3 months after that, after joining, is not the sort of impact I would have made in any other for-profit company. Asking for feedback is really, really important because sometimes as researchers, as developers, as somebody who built a model, you're so close to the problem that you don't, sometimes it's hard to zoom out and see the big picture and see where your work fits and whether or not it fits. I constantly ask for code reviews for somebody who has no idea about the problem that I'm working on. I ask them to come in, I explain to them what I'm doing, and then I show them their code and I ask them for feedback because there are a lot of things that I would miss because I've been doing it so long that it's important to ask for a second set of eyes. We have peer reviewers on everything that we write. We have these code reviews, like I said. Every brief we have a feedback session, a review session right before the brief so that whoever is briefing can get feedback from the audience so that they can tailor their brief better. And another big thing that I really feel very strongly about is learn how to write clean, efficient code and document it really well. So, and two reasons for that. A, when you give the code to somebody else, they should be able to understand what you did and why you did that, right? And also, if you look at that code 2 months later, you will have no idea what you did and why you did unless you document it really well, unless it's really clean code. And you will thank yourself later for that. This is for people who come straight out of school. The so what piece is all missing a lot of times. We concentrate so much on the process, on building a really cool machine learning model, or coming up with a new way of doing things. We're so embroiled in so engrossed in the process that we sometimes miss that. Okay, so what do I do with that model? What is that giving me? What is that giving to the client, the sponsor? So it's very important to think about what insights you're generating. It might just be from the EDA, like right when you get the problem. It might just be just looking at the data and, you know, sharing what you're seeing. And it's very important for that to be impactful and actionable, something that you can actually recommend your client to change. And it's also very important to have a story, a narrative of how you went from the data, the raw data, to your insight. You need to have a story. A lot of the top leadership does not care about how you did that. What they need to know is, what are your recommendations? They trust that you did the job really well. They know that your analysis is solid, it's quality work, but what is it that you're recommending and how can they do that? That's something that they really care about. And it's important to carve out time to be able to do that, because in the beginning, right after the last day before a brief, I would be working on my code. And in the last few hours, I would throw a couple of slides, throw a couple of graphs, and like, okay, I'll explain it to them. But these people don't need to know. What they want to know is the story of the insights, the actions that your research is recommending. So it's less about the process, more about the results and what the results are saying. So it's important to carve out time and leave out time to be able to do that. The last thing that I wanted to touch upon is decide what kind of data scientist you want to be. For example, in Facebook, there are a lot of product analytics and reporting data scientists where their skills require a lot of SQL, maybe some Python and R, not much modeling, a lot of dashboarding, a lot of seeing how the data is changing. Then there is the machine learning engineers, the data scientists who are building these models. So less of SQL, a lot of Python and R, a lot of building the models. So a lot of statistics that's involved in both. Then there is data science generalists, which is something that I feel what the data scientists are at CNA are, where you're using both the skills from the first and two buckets. And it's more about the breadth because you're working on so many different projects, and less about the depth. Yes, of course, you need to be an expert in what you're doing, but it's very important to be able to apply different skills to different problems. And a lot of our problems, like I said, are unstructured. They're really complex but interesting problems. So it's important to be able to apply these skills there. So yeah, that brings me to the end of my talk. If there are any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, or I don't know if you can unmute and ask. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Arpita, for sharing all that insight with us and your path to data science, which, I always tell people there's not one way to get to where you are, right? And you've taken many different paths, different education degrees and things like that. I think this was truly, truly insightful. Just to let you, everyone in the audience know, the Top Gun reference that Arpita is talking about, in Top Gun, the character named Charlie is actually based on a character or based on a former employee that worked here with CNA. So if you ever check out Top Gun, we're in there somewhere. Thank you, Arpita, for sharing all that. So I'm going to open this up to questions. It looks like we have a few. One person asked, can you tell us about your experience getting a security clearance?
Yes. So with security clearance, mine was surprisingly quick. Like I said, I feel like since I immigrated from another country, they had a pretty big file on me already. But my interim clearance took about 2 weeks. My final clearance took about 3 months. It was a very straightforward process. Although cumbersome, I had to fill out a really, really big form that went into a lot of details about where I live, people that I've talked to, all sorts of foreign contacts. And I feel it's easier to get a security clearance when your conduct is clean and responsible. And being a mom, I have two kids. Being a mom, a lot of that already coincides with my role as a mom. So I'm already pretty responsible. And yeah, that's something that really helps, I feel. But with the clearance, it's important to be very straightforward and write everything that they ask out on the form and not keep anything back, because they will eventually find it and it would affect your security clearance, either getting it or your status later on, because it's a continuous vetting process. So yeah, I hope I was able to answer your question.
So, and also just to add on to that, in order to obtain a security clearance, there are certain criteria one has to meet. You are required to be a U.S. citizen in order to obtain one. So that is probably the main criteria before even getting started. Fortunate for our employees here at CNA, we, as an organization, help with getting you or obtaining your security clearance, as opposed to some other organizations where you already have to have it. So that's already that big plus that CNA helps you with along the way. Now, Arpita, I saw you mentioned like quite a bit about like mentorship and things like that. How has mentorship really helped you in your path?
So CNA has two different paths for mentorship. I have a mentor in my division, in the data science division here at CNA, and I also have a CNA mentor. So my data science mentor is really helpful because I can really go into nitty-gritties of the projects that I'm working on, the kinds of tools the kind of skills that I'm gaining, and what projects should I work on later on, and things like that. So with my data science mentor, I can really go deep into that, and she's my mentor. She's great. She's a double postdoctorate, and she's really smart, and it's very helpful to be able to talk to her, to get that time and attention from someone to be able to craft my own career here at CNA. And my CNA mentor is also very helpful because he gives me insights into how to he's right now in the Pentagon. He's a scientific analyst there. How to be able to approach these opportunities, how to be able to just navigate really well around CNA. And he really helped me settle in the beginning. So these mentorship programs here that are built into the culture are very helpful, especially for people who are new. And there's a lot of informal mentorship that goes on here. I can literally go up to anyone, a peer. I have an informal peer mentor whom I go to discuss stuff a lot of times. It's really helpful to be able to have those channels of communication open all the time. And people are really cool and collaborative and very helpful here.
Okay, great. And I think mentorship is important, especially when you're starting off in your career. And I can even say 15 years into your career, it's always good to work with someone, whether it's in your organization or outside the organization, that can help you kind of guide or navigate certain situations that you're not familiar with, right? Or even just someone to talk it out with. I think is always helpful. One of the things you mentioned as far as improving was the writing piece, which I always tell people communication is key to any role that you do. So I know CNA does writing courses periodically to help you like write for the government. What other things are you doing to help improve your writing skills?
So two big things. One, I'm going through the writing course right now. I'm on class 2, I think, right now. So they give a lot of tips and a very structured way of thinking about it. And the second thing that I'm doing is writing a lot, because the more I write, the more feedback I get, the better I am becoming at it. I think I'm writing my fourth or fifth report right now. Um, that's something that really helps. So it's sort of theory and practical both that I'm getting right now.
Okay. Okay. Great. Great. And so I want to go way back to the beginning because this came up as a question, especially for people that are just exploring degrees in this area, right? And you said there was a class that you took in data science that really sparked your interest, and that's what you wanted to do. Do you recall what that class was?
Yeah, it was a data mining class with Python here in George Mason. Um, the class started out the class started out with a bang, I would say, because the professor, right in the first assignment, I think in the first month of the class, that professor was like, you cannot use any libraries. You have to code everything from scratch. And my first response was, I don't know how to code in Python. So I will have to learn that first and then attempt the assignment. And it was something that was right around when COVID hit. It was something that was so challenging. I would stay up till 3 a.m., but it was such an engrossing problem to do. And I feel like that's probably the reason that I really liked it because I put a lot of work into that. And I feel like the harder you work, the better you get. And also the more you like that the work that you're doing. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Great. Great. Well, I don't see any other questions coming in, Arpita. I do want to share with the audience, if you are interested in learning more about CNA, about Arpita's path, please feel free to reach out to us. You can email inquiriesjobs@cna.org to learn more about our opportunities. You can reach out or connect with Arpita and I via LinkedIn. If you have any further questions or just want to connect, feel free. This recording will be sent out to everyone just as a reminder. And thank you for joining us today.